Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms, and today it's another painting tutorial, and today's subject is a Flames of War US Airborne Jeep Recon Patrol. You'll notice the miniature is already primed. I've used the Zenithal pre-highlight method. I'll pop a little link in the video now that explains a little bit more about what that does. But you can get round it if you didn't want to do it. It just really helps build some of those earlier highlights. But you can do it flat over white or over grey or something like very, very similar. So first up, I'm using some model colour US Olive Drab. Now this is thinned in the airbrush, about 50-50 with water. I'm just going on a very, very light coat here, so allowing that pre-highlight to show through. So there are some darker areas and some lighter areas that naturally give you a highlight when you put a thin layer over the top. Next up is a 50-50 mix of the same US Olive Drab and also green brown, both from model colour. Now this is your highlight colour. I want to make sure I don't completely obliterate the previous coat. I'm sort of focusing on areas that are already slightly lighter from that white pre-highlight over the black. I'm also putting it in areas where not necessarily the sun would shine, but it just looks good really, just to build up some multiple tone layers. I add a little bit to the seats as well, and the seats are a very slightly different shade from the images I found, but they're going to have models on them, so it doesn't matter too much. So next up, using Contrast Garrick Sewer, I'm going to actually put this through the airbrush and use it a bit like an ink, just placing it in the shadowy areas and really reinforcing the transitions between the darkest and the lightest parts of the vehicle. A lot of that is fake, not super realistic, but it does look good on such a small miniature on the tabletop. Now here we see the Jeep with a gloss varnish on and the decals added. And the gloss varnish is there to aid the decals application, but also to help protect it against the next stages, which is the weathering. I'll pop a little link now for a tutorial I've done on how to add decals for those of you who haven't done it before. Now before we get into the sort of depths of the weathering, I'm just using some flat black from Scale Colour, some Scale 75 here, and it's perfect for tyres because it's super matte. Next up, I'm going to use some Citadel Grey Sear here, and it's just to paint in the handles of the tools on the side of the Jeep. It's because I'm going to be using contrast paint for the colour, rather than just painting in a flat wood colour here. By painting in the handles in the Grey Sear colour and then using contrast or Army Painter over the top, it will mean I don't need to highlight the wood separately afterwards. Next up is Scale 75 Black Metal. I'm just going to pick out the metal areas on the tools, on the spade and the axe. And I'm also going to dry brush the edges of the gun, which I've also painted in that flat black colour. I'll make sure the dry brushing is very subtle. I want the weapon to still look blued. I don't want it to look shiny. It's just a really nice way of picking out some edges and just to give it a little bit more texture. Next up is some Hardened Leather by Army Painter Speed Paints. So that's their own version of contrast style paints, and this is for the handles of the spade and of the axe there. Might have to go over and give it a second layer there. Just want to make sure that it gives a nice smooth covering but a little bit of extra shadow around the edges. Now some Nuln Oil to shade the metal parts. Next up, I'm using some Contrast Garrick Sewer. Now I actually added some packs, some bags to the side of this Jeep. It's not part of the official build. I'm painting 4 in one go, and I just wanted to add a bit of variety. So I probably should have used one of the others in the example. But just going over the top of the same colour that the Jeep's been painted in with this, and then highlighting after will do the trick. And it's model colour US Field Drab for the highlight on these bags. I've just in the paint about 50-50. I'm just picking out the edges and some little marks along the top, and it suffices quite well to sort of work as a highlight. There is a little bit of natural highlighting in there, as the contrast doesn't give you a flat colour anyway, so that's gone over the undertone, and this just sort of picks it out enough and makes it look like a leather or a canvas bag. So now onto the weathering. I'm using AK Dust and Dirt Deposits weathering set. There's 3 pots in here, and I'm using the earth deposits, and then I'll be thinning it down and cleaning it off using Artist White Spirit. Now the trick here is to kind of slop it in the areas where the dust and dirt buildup may be. I'm not too worried about it being a bit too heavy at the moment, because I'm going to take the majority of it back off using the Artist White Spirit and a clean brush. I'm going to feather it out and sort of wipe it away and paint some streaks in and things. So I'm just kind of getting the base layer down. It's such a small vehicle, there's no point in me being too delicate with it at this time. So here I am with a clean brush with some Artist White Spirit on, just starting to wash it away, and you just slowly work at it and play around with it until you get it in a desired finish. I've added a bit more inside as well, and also painted it on the tyres, and then washed most of it off, and it just gives a really nice effect overall. So next up is some Game Air Silver. This is a nice bright silver, and I'm actually going to use it to pick out some of the edges. A little bit of dry brushing, just picking out some of the topmost areas where the paint will have worn off through use. Now some Vallejo thick mud, and this is European mud, and this is an earth effect rather than a basing material. I'm just going to add it to the tyres and also around the edges of the vehicle and the bumper and things like that, and it just really looks cool when it dries. Now, I didn't record this, but I've added a little bit of sponge chipping using Rhinox hide. It always seems to be my go-to for a colour for sponge chipping. Added a little bit to the bonnet and things, but again, the miniature is so small that you don't want to overdo it. But this is, I thought this was enough for a miniature this size. And there we are, one very diddy Jeep. The crew have been painted in the same way as that I painted the inventory in my inventory tutorial, and I'll pop a link in now. Rather than extending the length of the video, I thought there would be no point in repeating that. You can go and check that over there. And I think it looks absolutely fine for a nice looking tabletop miniature, which was my aim before we started. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, what you think. Whether you'll be using any of these methods yourself, and is there any methods that you have used yourself that you thought I might be interested in. Always interested in hearing how other people approach painting. Well, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. I'm going to do plenty more Flames of War painting tutorials. As I said, there was 2 already up there at the moment on the channel. There's the aforementioned infantry tutorial one, and there's also a Sherman as well. I'll pop a link in the show for that. My name's Stuart. I'd love to hear from you, so please do comment on the video. Feel free to get in touch, etc. via social media. All the links are in the show description. You can check me out on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, etc. And I'd love to hear what you're working on and whether you're painting Flames of War at the moment. So thanks very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.